Is there an
Yeah.
English word for laughing with disgust that I am not aware of?
I don't know, but I was going to say that the space between those two, I think, is where this movie is. I would say that this is a movie about friendship and depression, and the first hour and 38 minutes are pretty tough. Welcome back. We are here to do our next episode. Ilan, which movie did we pick for today?
So today we picked the movie Bridesmaids.
Why?
She was that opportunity to take a sip of coffee, which was clearly not the moment, but it's fine. So we're talking about Bridesmaids. My answer is two-pronged. So one is just, I actually very much enjoy this movie. So that's one. But I think the reason we landed on it for this podcast specifically is we were talking about trailers in a previous episode. And you had brought up Bridesmaids as an example, correct me if I'm wrong, but as an example of a trailer that promised certain things and didn't deliver on those promises. So there were like scenes in the trailer you said that were actually not in the movie that made you laugh really hard.
Yes.
And not to speak for you, but it sounded like you were disappointed by that.
Yes. Yeah. And so it also sounded like our experience of this film previously was not the same experience. And I was like, this would be an interesting thing for me to revisit because I haven't actually seen the movie in a number of years. And yes, to your point about the trailer, which we will get to in just a moment, it was a classic example of a broken promise and also a lot of confusion on my part. So do you want to do the synopsis? You want to synopsisize?
Yeah, so I'm going to read, this is very a nice, I think it's just a very concise sentence that I'm going to enjoy reading out loud from IMDb. Competition between the maid of honor and bridesmaid over who is the bride's best friend threatens to upend the life of an out-of-work pastry chef. That's
pretty good. That's a pretty good review of what the movie is about. How would you describe it if you were describing this movie to somebody, how would you say it?
This is a very funny movie about I'm not going to phrase this in the perfect way, but like a woman kind of trying to get her life together while simultaneously realizing her best friend's life is together, and struggling with coming of age is the wrong term, but it's almost like coming of middle age.
I think you could use coming of age at any point. I think it's associated only with young people, and I think that's bogus.
I'm going to say it's a coming of mid-30s age story.
Yes.
And the classic, our societal trope of like getting your stuff together. And yeah, so that's I want to hear yours though.
I would say that this is a movie about friendship and depression, and the first hour and 38 minutes are pretty tough.
Oh, it's fired. This movie's only out 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Yes. So I'm actually really excited to talk about this because I really think we're coming into it from very different spaces. But let's kind of jump in to, also I want to say it's from 2011. So it's 10 years old. This film is 10 years old. Let's talk about the trailer. So what do you remember about the trailer for you that really, did it do its job that we love when trailers do right?
I'm going to be honest. I did not rewatch the trailer. So in some ways it'll be more truthful, my analysis,
that's fair.
But in some ways it's a very 10 years old analysis of the trailer. I think it did its job in getting me invested in the character Kristen Wiig plays Annie, the main character, and getting me invested in that character and being curious enough to see what happens to her. But also it did entice me with both the humor, the comedy, and the vast array of actors, both comedic and not, from different worlds. And we'll get into this later, but I think you've got people from a lot of sub-characters from the show The Office, the American The Office, and then a handful of SNL people, and then even Matt Lucas from Little Britain. And I don't know if you've seen that, but that's a very eccentric show that we could get into.
I know he is eccentric.
Yes. So all of those, I think, did pull me in. I am again trying to remember a memory from a decade old. I did see this in theaters also, so that's saying something that because I don't think I don't see 10 years ago. I think I would see like a movie a month in theaters, which is all relative, whether that's a lot or a little, but
sounds awesome to me. It sounds perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Enough to be special, but not so much that you're like,
Yeah, exactly. I think I was probably the same amount of like frequency. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is obviously where we differ, right? I was like, yeah, the trailer was good enough.
Yeah. So I just want to say I also saw this in the theater, and I'm going to go back to the trailer context because it's important for the setting of the theater for me. So when I saw this trailer, when this movie came out, I was in nursing school. I'm a nurse practitioner. And one of my in quote majors in nursing school is women's health. So a lot of reproductive stuff, a lot of sexual health stuff. In the trailer that I saw, there is a sequence with Annie and a child where she's clearly, I think, going to babysit this child, or she's meeting a child at someone's house. And the kid has gone into her purse and has started eating her birth control. And she realizes what's happened. And she's like, wait, what happened? Which one did you eat? And he's like, I ate a blue one. And it is so funny. And it is not in the movie. And I saw this trailer, and I had a whole group of friends who were all women's health, majors with me. And I was like, let's go. A bunch of us were about to get married. Let's go do this together. We're going to watch it. We're going to go to a fancy theater. We're going to have alcoholic beverages and food in the dark theater, which I don't know who thought that was a good idea, to eat dark, food in a dark room. We had nachos. It was all over our front of our shirts. It was such a bad idea. Anyway, I'm ranting. The movie, and so there's like 5 or 6 of us all together watching this movie, and I kept like going, over and over again, and I kept waiting for the stuff that I saw in the trailer to show up, and it never came in, and I was like, I just got duped.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk more about the themes, and I want to talk about like the comedic components, but I think I'm still trying to understand what this movie was trying to do, honestly. Having watched it twice, like I'm just like, what was the goal? Who was the target? What was the drive? Besides pulling all of this talent together, and it's a talented group. I'm not dismissing that at all, and the quality of the actual film is phenomenal. But I feel like I missed the boat. Like I just don't understand. So that was my experience.
And we may never know.
And we may never know
that question. So
yeah,
just to take the pressure off us as podcasters.
Oh yeah. No. I mean, sometimes we've had some revelatory moments that have actually been really cool for me. So we'll see what happens. So kind of thinking about what you are aware of in this film, what are the themes for you? What stands out for you thematically?
Well, definitely what you said about friendship. That's sort of like the biggest thing in here. I thought depression was also on point that you said.
Mm-hmm. Annie's a mess.
Yeah. And I think to go into that for a minute, some of it I struggled with because I think a comedic movie doesn't necessarily it takes a lot to handle depression as a theme.
Yes.
And the idea that she would be, and I wrote this down, like that she'd basically be shaken out of this depression by like a pep talk from Melissa McCarthy's character. And that's it. Whereas I think depression is a very vast and like nuanced subject that this would be its own 3-series podcast, whatever. But yeah, the idea, I struggled with that believability wise, that it's kind of like, oh, my life is like really sucking right now. And I'm like probably depressed. And to get out of it, like someone play fight beats me up and like gives me a friend pep talk, and then I go bake a cake. Versus like, or it could be years of therapy.
Yes.
So those were a couple of the themes. I went down a rabbit hole a little bit. I named sort of the themes you brought up, but I'm curious to hear if there were others that you were thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, friendship, depression, and jealousy were the three that stood out to me. And I don't know if this is particularly a theme, but sort of, actually, no, yeah, it is perception. I think Annie, we're seeing a lot of everything through her view of how everything is going. And in her experience, everything in her life is absolute garbage. And everything in Lillian's life, her best friend who's having the wedding, is glowy and magical. And then we have Rose Byrne's character, who I am spacing on, Helen, who is the competitive bridesmaid who has all of these resources and is, you know, immaculately dressed all the time and clearly is lonely and sad as well. And so there are these very, very harsh misperceptions that some of these characters are having about each other. And we know at the end, we learn that Lillian's really been struggling and is having her own space of sadness and process, which is super common when you're about to get married, around the cost of the wedding and the shift in roles, and she's losing her apartment, and Helen's been really intense, you know, and all of these things. And it's like this whole idea, like you mentioned, the coming of age, I think it's an important thing to bring up because that's the punchline. There is no step up. It's a constant process. There's no one thing that you're going to do that's going to make you, in quotes, an adult. It's constantly evolving and shaping yourself. And
wait, I'm not going to bake a cake and then just go to my friend's wedding and Wilson Phillips will show up.
So that could very well happen for you. And if it does, I wish you nothing but blessings. It will not solve a single one of your problems. But like, you know,
glad we clarified that.
Yeah, it's really important. You know, the cake will be delicious and will solve zero issues for you. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like it was a comedy of errors in the most painful way, I thought, because everyone is experiencing components of each other and they're not getting a full sense of anybody. And I'm going to pin this because I want to come back to it when we talk about the characters. What I just said about sort of how people are perceiving each other. I don't know what the cop saw in Annie that made her appealing to him. That was one of the things I was struggling with, because everything that I saw of Annie was like, you're a hot mess and you need a lot of help. And then he's like, hey, baby, you know, and I'm like, okay, what am I seeing? What am I not seeing? I mean, so I'm just throwing that out there so we can, when we talk about the characters, I want to come back to that. But thematically, those were the things that really, really stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only other theme I would throw on is, and this only hit me the second time around, and maybe this for other people is just really on the nose, I don't know, but I didn't notice it the first time around, was that the lyrics so the movie ends with Wilson Phillips, the band, showing up to the wedding. Mm-hmm. And the third line, it looks like in the movie, Hold On. The third line in the song Hold On is, no one can change your life except for you. And I was like, oh,
that's awesome.
That's the theme. Like, that's literally this is what the story of the movie is.
That's
that, like,
awesome.
That's her. Because I was trying to figure out going in, knowing we were going to record this, like, well, what's the character arc for Annie? Like, if you had to name it, and I'm like, oh, that is it. No one can change your life except for you. Mm-hmm. Is that, like, people around her keep pushing her to be like, you need to sort of get your head on straight, that the world's not against you.
Because she is acting like that everyone, that it's, you know, a very victim mindset, and she just can't do anything.
Yeah.
You know, to change that for a while.
Yeah.
I think that's why I marked the hour and 38 minutes, is because that's when she starts to realize that, you know, that she can change things. It may have been after being, you know, tussled about by Megan and a cake baking, but, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Fun fact, since you mentioned the length of the film, I noticed this. We were talking about, jumping quickly back to scenes that were not in it. Yeah. There is a 2 hour and 10 minute or so unrated version, which does contain all of the additional scenes. So
what?
I'm glad we didn't watch it for this podcast, because obviously most people are not necessarily seeking out the unrated version. But yeah, it includes it. I'm looking at the list here, and it includes, you know, the 5-minute scene you described with the she's
birth
actually
control.
trying to go on a date. It turns the
Okay.
scene, and there, I guess the date has a child who ends up taking the pills.
The pills.
Yeah, and then there's a few other scenes which I won't go through and list, but know that if you're going to rewatch it, that is available as well.
But then I'm just like, trailer lied.
Right, exactly.
Like, I'm just
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will let that go.
Yeah.
So should we jump into movie components? Like, what are things about the actual movie making that stood out to you?
Yeah, definitely. Right before we do that, we'll do what we always do way late into the podcast, which is this was directed by Paul Feig.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh my gosh.
So directed by Paul Feig. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name properly. It was actually written by Kristen Wiig and Annie
Momolo, maybe, I think.
who, if you look, actually has a cameo. She is the woman who sits next to Annie on the plane.
Oh, yeah. Oh my god!
And has like a freak out, and then, well, we're going to talk about cast, so I'm actually going to hold off on naming some of the cast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But themes. I'd love to talk about the cinematography at least briefly.
Sure.
This was a surprisingly, like, there wasn't any one scene that I was like, "Whoa, this is beautiful," but there was a lot of the night cinematography. I very much noticed that the lighting was really good.
That's
like, it was
true.
really well done. It wasn't overdone. It wasn't like stylized or anything. But I was watching and thinking, oh, like, this is really nice for a comedy.
It's nice for a comedy. Yeah, no, you're right. It was very strong lighting throughout. Sometimes that can be really distracting when it's not good, and it wasn't an issue at all.
Yeah, like I don't know why this movie came into my brain. I was thinking of other comedies. The movie Superbad just jumped into my head, which is a very different comedy, just to name that. But it's shot mostly in the day with a very harsh sunlight. And which ends up being very flat to the eye.
Interesting. I haven't seen that one, but I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I shouldn't.
No, it's not that. It's like what happened to us when we watched forgetting the name of the movie now, but it's like a teen movie.
Okay.
So I think if you watch it at this point, you'll be like,
oh, with Booksmart, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I could just watch it for the cinematography components.
Well, yeah. You're like, oh, this is very flat, but that's not the point. The point is to, yeah. But I didn't have much else on cinematography because I think for this kind of film, it tends to be more like, let's make sure this does its job and then focus on the story.
Right. I think, and you know, it's so funny because I feel like in the absence of it being over the top, it's actually very strong. And one of the ways that I actually thought they used editing really well, there were a couple of scenes, more than a couple actually, where cars are involved. Annie's in a car, or the cop's in a car, and she's trying to, get his attention, or just silliness in cars. And I don't know, I thought they did that really well. Like I feel like I've seen other films where you can feel the tightness of the car, you can feel the space, and it's just like, it's distracting. And like, there's a sequence at the end where she's trying to get the cop to engage with her, and she's trying to, because they're looking for Lillian, they can't find her. And the sequence was ridiculous, but it was very well done, where it's just all of these silly car things that are happening. And it wasn't choppy. Like, it was actually very smooth that it, and I'm thinking earlier, there's a scene that she has. So Jon Hamm plays Dingbat.
We don't even have to say his character's name. He's the worst. He does a great job playing him as the worst.
He's
but anyway.
Amazing. What is his name? I'm spacing on it right now. I'm looking.
She never says it.
No, Ted.
Yes,
maybe? Ted. Yeah. When he picks her up after her car has an issue, and he's being really skeezy and gross in the car, and then she jumps out of the car, and as he's driving away in this sporty little car and zooming, he goes, "You're no longer my number 3," and like zooms off, and everything works because the sound of the car isn't too loud. You can hear exactly what I was just like, the sound editing was good. Like, that landed, right? Because it was everything worked in the film components of it to make that land really well.
Yeah.
So I thought the use of sound was really good, and like the sound editing, and just it just didn't feel clunky as a story, because they just needed to kind of give the actors the space to do the story. Like you said, just let everyone do what they need to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think this is a little bit of a sort of a left turn, but when I think about the scenes that got me to buy into the movie, it seemed like there was one of the first two scenes is Annie and Lillian in that coffee shop. And that really establishes their friendship. And that felt like all the things you just named were it like set them up for success to do scenes like that that were simultaneously heartfelt and funny and also established story and character.
I have to agree with you. I think the scenes between the two of them were one of the few parts that really kept me focused on the film. Like they seem to have, maybe it's just really good acting, but they seem to have just very good chemistry together. Those Maya Rudolph and Kristen Wiig, like it's just really solid. And I was aware with this film, and I wonder if you would agree that, there was a lot of times where it did feel like they were ad-libbing and riffing, but I also felt like I was watching masters doing it. And it had a very different feeling from when we watched Booksmart and that was happening. And I was like, please stop, I mean, there were some jokes on this one too, that also I was like, you have to stop. Like I'm cringing on so many levels, but it just felt like I was watching like Jedi Masters do it, like just doing it. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And that cafe was one of those examples where I just was like, how much of this was written? Cause it all feels right. Like, I don't know what.
Yeah. I wanted to be there hanging out with them.
Yes. Like when they both put the food in their teeth.
I was just going to say, like, that's something I actually used to do a lot. Like if there was a brownie, I was going to do that because it always got a laugh and it was always funny.
That's so good. I also just need to give a shout out to costume design, because clothing did play a part in this film, especially when we got to the dresses and that whole bridal shop scene. But also it was a question of stature and status. And Helen's character, Rose Byrne's character, the very, very affluent friend, who's basically an empty vessel of sadness, had the best clothing. Like she was dressed gorgeously. And like when they do the bridal show, the engagement party, and she's wearing a full-on evening gown.
Oh my God, with the slow-mo and like
with the slow-mo and the turn and let me just move my skirt over here so I can walk gloriously. I just loved it. I just thought they used costume in a fantastic way.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, totally. You often have things to say about music and I often don't. So I'm deferring to you if you do.
Oh my God, I literally have on my page music. This was one of those where I love that that's true. Music is I'm so aware of it. And I feel like you're so aware of other nuanced components too. It's so cool. We complete each other. So the music fit really well. I felt like they used it as its own humor point when it needed to be. So in that sequence with the multiple attention-getting components with the car, when they're trying to get the cop, Chris O'Dowd's character at the end, to kind of engage, the music kept changing to fit what was happening in the car, and it was so funny. And then, of course, having Wilson Phillips show up at the end was hilarious, because clearly it was very important for them. But beyond that, like the sort of background soundtracky music, I don't remember being very riveted by, but the use of songs, I thought, fit really well with what they were trying to do.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I would say about the Wilson Phillips piece is I've seen a lot of comedies where they throw in this like big name band at the end and it's like, we did it, this is going to close out the movie, and I end up feeling like, are you serious? Like this has nothing to do with the story. And I actually didn't. I felt like a little bit like that with this movie, because it's distracting, but
yes,
it was earlier in the film when Annie gets Lillian the CD
yes
as a gift.
Yes.
So it incorporated into the story, and also there was no focus on them, on the band, besides them playing the music. Whereas I think other films I've seen where it's like they have 3 lines and it's like, okay,
and it's awkward, right? Yeah.
It's like, we're not actors, don't let them act.
Yeah, just let them sing the song. Yeah, no,
Just
absolutely.
stay in your lane. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the music was done really well. And then I would say one thing about like sound design or like sound effects. I don't know if this is the time to talk about the dress shopping like throw up scene. I don't know if you want to go there.
You know what? I think we're gonna have to just go there, and then we can bridge into the characters from that scene.
Perfect. That's perfect. So
Great.
I'll say my thing about that. And then we can talk about it. They're all in the bathroom throwing up and
having diarrhea,
and
raging.
having diarrhea. Yes, it's heinous.
Disgusting.
I think I wrote the word heinous in all caps on my notes. Meanwhile, Annie and Helen are out on the floor, and Annie's trying to like put off that she's not having food poisoning. And they kind of cut between the turmoil in the restroom and back and forth between them two having a face off out on the shopping floor. I don't know
on the white carpet.
Yeah, on the white carpet, and Annie is sweating more and more profusely. And there's a moment when she's like, I think I was just feeling hungry. And Helen's like, oh, like, well, why don't you have one of these Jordan almonds? And the way that they turned up the volume on the Jordan almond going into Kristen Wiig's mouth, I thought was just like a beautiful way of turning up the tension even to 11, essentially.
Yes.
As painful as that scene was, they were like, how can we make this even more?
I had to actually fast forward through some of it this time because I was so uncomfortable. But I do remember that. And I also, to what you're saying about sound use and effect and editing, when they come into that store and Megan elicits a sound from a body part that she doesn't know which one it was. Like, that was masterful. And she's like, I'm not confident which end that was. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. That was awful. That whole thing, and Lillian ending up on the street, crapping her, like, I'm just like,
So you have to wonder, is there certain types of humor that people try to, or what's the word I'm thinking of? Like the feeling we're like, for me at least, I was laughing, but I was also, my stomach hurt at the same time. And I was just like, I'm laughing, but I'm also like really uncomfortable for them.
Right.
And disgusted.
So
is there I guess that's what I'm asking. Like, is there an English word for laughing with disgust that I am not aware of?
I don't know, but I was going to say that the space between those two, I think, is where this movie is. And I think you and I are on different ends of the space because
nice.
I was like, I think this is supposed to be funny. And I'm just sitting here horrified. Like, I wrote horrifying, right? Like the dress shop horrifying. Like, I just don't know what I was supposed to be taking from that. And then there's a flicker of a fear in my head of like, did this happen to somebody? Is that where this came from? Like, is this a real, like, I don't know I don't know. Maybe it did.
Oh God.
I know. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is even more unfortunate.
Well, I would have to say though, that like there are films or movies, I don't think I could call them films, but where this is the whole movie. Like a scene like this is really like just over and over again. Like, how can we just push and push and push?
Right.
There's no focus on story or anything like that. And I'm not into those movies as much. I think this was like, okay, this is as bad as it gets as far as like cringy type of humor in this film.
No, that's true. That's true. I mean, I remember when this movie came out, there was a lot of hype around it because there's this weird dichotomy of comedy and who can carry comedy. And it's a mostly female cast, right? And they are running the show. And I remember reading articles about it and just being like, can they do it? Is it, what's the difference? And it's like, look, it doesn't matter who the person is. Everyone can do disgusting humor. And here's an example of that. And can we kind of use this as an avenue into characters a little bit? Is that
Yeah, and I'd also love to pivot into what you just said, and not to give it its due, like written by two women, and the men in this film. And I know I'm being very binary right now, but the men in this film are for the most part, I'm looking through the cast list, like sub characters.
They are sub characters.
Yeah,
and it's a binary film. I mean, it's a it's within a pretty specific heteronormative space. Yeah.
Yep.
With the exception of my segue into characters of Megan, so Melissa McCarthy's character, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed her this time in this movie. I don't remember enjoying any of them last time, the first time I watched it, but this time I was like, wait, she's saving most of the scenes that she's in and holding her own. And I have no gauge on her besides the fact that she has a high powered job. She has like 19 dogs now because she stole them from the bridal party. I don't know. She just held her own. And I was like, she might be queer. I actually don't know. She kept talking about wanting to climb people and, chasing the guy on the plane, who, by the way, is her real life husband.
Yes.
Which I loved.
Yeah. And they've done a couple other things together too.
They have.
Yeah.
But let's talk more about badass female characters, because that's mostly what we have.
So one thing I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph made their start, and well, not their start, but they were on SNL together.
I believe so. I have to check the years, but I think you're right.
Yeah, and they're definitely known for that. And one thing I was going to say was that a lot of films, if you think about films that came from SNL characters, they are not of the story quality is not there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use some really bad examples or like good examples to prove my point. Like, what's that film with Chris Kattan and like Will Ferrell?
Oh my gosh.
Disco something.
It's the disco movie. I know which one you mean.
So like movies like that, right? There's no story. It's just we're doing a shtick for 2 hours. And I think more examples will come to me, but there's a lot of that where it's like someone is leaving SNL or about to leave SNL or just left SNL. And then it's like, hey, let's do a movie deal with you. And then we get this like full 2 hour segment where they haven't really tried to make a story. They just say, we're going to make your character into a movie. And I think one thing I love about this is I didn't realize it till the second time around 10 years later that this is sort of, I don't know about the timing, but this is a similar thing, except for they did a good job telling a story, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, there is a story. It's about a very, very depressed person who's not being very nice to people. And that's, that can happen with depression. I mean, one of my notes is everyone's being mean to each other. Like nobody was being nice. Like Helen was being mean to Annie. Annie's being mean to everybody. She's just destructing on everybody. But yeah, no, you're right. I think it did not feel like a collection of shtick scenes. It was a story and there was an arc and there was a resolution and a conclusion. It's just like some of the ways that the parts of the story were told. I was like, was this necessary?
Right. Fair. I don't know if I got us off track from talking about characters though.
No, it's all good. I mean, one of the challenges for me was that I just didn't feel like I got enough content of characters. And a lot of people felt really flat and like caricature-like of these personas. So we have Rita, who is Lillian's cousin and is at home and miserable. And then we meet Becca, who's in this very odd marriage where it sounds like sex is almost never happening, at least not in a way that feels good to her. And like them on the plane, they were so funny when they were getting drunk together.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And she's, and Becca's like, what did she say? I wrote it down. It was so funny. You smell like pine needles. Your face is like sunshine. Like you're the most beautiful person. And then they start making out. I'm like, can we go back to that? Cause that was hilarious.
Yeah. They were really funny. And they felt the second time around watching it, I felt like, well, are they just here as like character foils to fill in this like bridal party, and yet at the same time they're really funny? It was a weird
it was weird. What stood out to you character wise?
I mean, some of the cameos I actually very much like. The roommates, I thought so Rebel Wilson and Matt Lucas, I thought were just, so they're Annie's roommates and they are like adult siblings.
They were so weird.
They're just, yeah, they're so weird. I think the one reason I liked them is because I've had so many roommates in my life through this since college through like my late 20s that I've never had. If any of my former roommates listen to this, like you were never as weird as these two in the movie Bridesmaids, but I do think there's an element of like they like living with people you don't really know that well. And they just like took it to the next level with things like getting a free tattoo.
Oh, that was so gross.
that was rough. I
was
closed my eyes.
I was struggling with that. And then when she pours the peas on her back, I was like, we need to move on. Like, this is too much.
I'm probably not going to come back to it. So I will say what made me laugh out loud was, them talking about like, yeah, I know you said like don't go in your room and like don't read your diary, and then she's like, at first I wasn't sure what it was. I thought it was just a really long handwritten, what did she say,
sad book or something.
Yeah, a really long handwritten sad book. And that part just made me laugh really hard. I just thought a lot of the supporting characters really did just that. Like they did a great job of supporting the story. Thing.
No, they did do that. I was just like, I actually have in my notes in full caps, OMG, I forgot about the horrific roommates. Is it supposed to be funny? Like, I was like, oh my God. Cause I was so like, I'm sorry, the tattoo is disgusting.
Oh no, it's terrible. It
was terrible. And I just forgot about them. And then they showed up and I was like, oh, here we go. Okay.
Yep. There they are.
There they are.
Briefly, I would mention Jon Hamm, partially because I think, I don't know about you, I watched maybe 3, I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for this from somebody, but I watched maybe 3 episodes of Mad Men.
Oh, dude, same. I never watched it.
Yeah, it's
so depressing.
I could probably go back at some point and like...
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe, yeah, I think that's how I feel. But that wasn't my point. What I was going to say is that he was really, I think that show really made him famous is my understanding. And then doing this character in this movie, Bridesmaids, was like a 180. Totally.
Yes.
Because it's such different genres.
I've seen him in other things where it's very serious or intense. And this was definitely like a step away from that. And I mean, the sequence where we meet him with all of the hilarity around whatever they're doing sexually, there's this one part where he's like maniacally laughing in her face. And I just was like, I was sitting there and I was like, okay, it was so funny because he was just all over the place. And he's so constrained in Mad Men. Like he's so curled in on himself. And then you have this complete wild guy in this movie. It was a fun contrast for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Which actually, to go back to Melissa McCarthy for a minute, also, I didn't watch the show Gilmore Girls.
No, I didn't either.
But I think this was a similar thing that happened for people who did, because she plays a very, I don't know if there's a better word, like vanilla character.
Okay. Like kind of bland.
Yeah. Just very like, because she's but then she's in this movie as a very not bland.
No.
So wholesome. That's the word I was looking for.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And she's very much not like a wholesome character. She's a good character in this film. Like she's a good person in this film, but she's not a wholesome character.
She's a good person who has a brother who she completely, we'll come into it in the LOLs, but oh my gosh, she honestly saved the movie for me.
That's fair.
I think we have to talk about the plane scene because I know that was one that you referenced as one of your favorites to me. But her interactions with the agent, the marshal, who's like, I'm not a marshal.
Air marshal.
The not air marshal, who's her husband, as we said in real life. But just like, I have to just say, of all of the characters in this movie, she is one of the more confident ones. And seeing that, very comfortable with herself, and seeing that in a person who has a bigger body in a cast where she is the only one like that was honestly a joy. But she just knows who she is, And she's trying to hit on him hard. It's so inappropriate, but she doesn't care. She's like, we're good. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And sure enough, at the end of the movie, he's her date at the wedding.
Right, exactly. I love what you said about she just knows who she is. I think that's a really good way to put it. And she's sort of the most liberated of all the characters.
Yes. She is not depressed. She is not struggling with anything at the time that we see her. Lillian is not doing great. Helen's not doing great. Annie's a hot mess. Like, but, you know, she's like, it's cool. I'm going to take 9 puppies and everything's going to be fine.
I should have done, I'm probably closer to someone who could handle 6, but you know, I've got 9.
I love that. She's like, I may have overstepped. Yeah. Like I may have gone over what I needed. I want to talk about the cop a little bit. Can we get...
Yeah. I was actually going to go there next too.
Oh no! And wait, I'm sorry. I said the plane. Do you want to talk about the plane first?
No, we'll get to it later. Okay, There's no way we're going to miss that.
Okay. Just that I love Chris O'Dowd as an actor. He is delightful, and he narrates a kids show called Puffin Rock that I know because I have young children and we used to watch it all the time. And it's the same soft, silly humor in that show. Like he's just who he is in what he does in his portrayals. And I enjoyed his character. I didn't understand the chemistry between him and Annie. I'm like, what are you picking up on, dude? Like, I don't get it, you know? And maybe there was some subtext that was missed in a scene that was gone. I don't know. But it was a sweet component of the story. And I love how they just don't even try to hide that he's not from the States and he's a cop. And like, you know, he's like, oh no, I got
explain how he's a cop.
Yeah. Like, oh, it's because I was really strong. You know?
I think that's one of the strengths of his character and him as an actor, and also in this film, is that similar to, I guess, Melissa McCarthy's character, is like owning who you are.
Yes, that's a really good point. I hadn't seen that until just now. Yeah.
And I think to speak to, I agree with you. I think it's like, why is he attracted to someone who is so like, at least in the moment of him pulling her over, it seems like the only way that sort of works, I think, is they do reference that he used to go into her bakery before.
I forgot about that.
I think without that, I agree with you. It's like loose story. But I think it's like, oh, maybe this was something that started years ago, and now it's like
maybe it was like a little crush. No, that's true. That's okay. I forgot about that. I'll give him that.
Yeah, but I think he was so natural, and he also lent like another grounded like element to the film.
Totally.
Like a voice of reason.
A voice of Irish reason. Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
Should we talk about the plane?
Before we do, the last thing I'll say is that the casting of this film, I actually thought was done really well. And apparently Allison Jones is like a casting director who casts so many things. She casts The Office, which I'm obsessed with. And there's a lot of people from sort of sub characters from The Office that show up in this movie. I just think she does a masterful job. So I'm shouting at someone who was not in the film, but
nice.
I guess we're going to the airplane scene / LOL moments because
yes, that's a good segue.
Yeah. So that scene, I think they do a great job. Kristen Wiig does a great job of like, it has like this arc where things start to fall apart. And I think just, you know, her being nervous on planes, and then her co-writer, Annie, who's like cameoing as the like nervous wreck next to her, basically.
Oh my gosh.
This is one of my favorite lines. She goes, I didn't catch it the first time. She goes, something's going to happen. I dreamt that the plane went down last night. You were in the dream.
You were there. I know.
You were there, yeah. And it's like they haven't even met before, but she's dreamt about her. It's like it kind of your head. It messes with your head a little bit.
Totally. Yeah.
And
she's.
I
was just gonna say about the friend, the person on the plane. Her eyes are just bugging out the whole time, and they're like, "Oh my god."
She has that energy. Like I feel like I've sat next to that person before.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna go to this scene where she goes up to first class, and she's on whatever pills / scotch that Helen has given her. I don't know. There's something about that scene just really got me. Just the whole like, I'm ready to party with the best of friends.
It's funny now for me. I'm enjoying hearing you tell it because you got so much joy from it.
This is the thing. It's what I was saying about other movies like Zoolander, where it's like fun
Right.
to quote them.
Right.
And then just her calling this the flight attendant stove.
Yes.
Like it's such a like feeble attempt to like take a shot at him.
Yeah. Stove. And also, no disrespect for anyone named Steve in the world, but there's not. I don't immediately jump to a lot of ways you can make silly nicknames off of Steve.
Right.
It never occurred to me that you could call somebody Stove.
Well, now you've got that in your arsenal.
Now I have it in my arsenal.
Next
and
time
I'm
you're
set
upset
for
with a
life.
Steve. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Stove. Yeah, like yeah, again, for me, just, I thought Melissa McCarthy's character was the funniest on the plane, as well as Rita and Becca and their little confessional corner of alcohol.
Which I feel like is this thing that I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole of like bachelor and bachelorette parties, but I do think there's this idea of going and getting wasted and then like showing your true self, which makes me kind of sad. And that is some of the humor, is that they're playing with that societal thing where it's like, you can't be you unless you're like wasted and like on a trip, like a once in a lifetime trip with other people.
Yeah, it is sad. And I do think that a number of these characters were just not happy with their lives.
Yeah.
And it just kind of was like, oh, bummer. It's really a bummer. All right. So let's go into LOLs.
Okay. One moment that really, this is a very small moment, but I thought this was done so well when Helen really shows her true self and it's like bawling her eyes out in Annie's car. And Annie looks over and has this shit-eating grin. That just made me laugh so hard because it was so, because you think like, oh, this is where she's going to, soften to her and be nice.
And be
like,
nice.
Okay, you're a human. And instead she's like, no, you, like, I'm so happy. This is the first time. And she says, this is the first time I've ever seen you look ugly.
Yeah.
And I just, the little
and then
smile.
Helen's like, no, I'm not ugly.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God.
That is a good part. One of mine is when Annie and the cop are hanging out and he's letting her use the speed. Is it called a speed gun? That seems like a not good name.
Radar gun?
Radar gun? Speed radar checker thingy.
It's our show. We'll call it a speed gun.
And it's like, oh no, this one's good. And he's like guessing, like it's just this cute, silly energy. And then there's somebody who's like going 90 and he's like, oh wait, I gotta go. Like, I gotta go do my job now.
Yep. I love that.
What's another one?
One of the ones that made me laugh out loud was I don't remember which scene it's after, but it's Annie's driving and I think she's just met Helen and she's doing impressions of her. And like, oh. And like,
isn't she going off the road too?
Yeah, she's like veering off the road. This is where she meets Chris O'Dowd.
That's right.
She meets Officer Rhodes. Yeah.
Yes,
just
Officer Rhodes. Yes.
Her little like impersonation voice.
Yeah.
Really hard.
She's good. She's good at voices. She actually does a lot of cartoon characters for movies. Again,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, through the channel of my children who we watch a lot of cartoon movies with. She does a lot and it's super. She's great. She's so great.
Yeah.
Another LOL, which also includes Officer Rhodes. So we didn't really touch on the bridal shower besides mentioning the puppies, but basically it is an idea
let's touch on it.
The stolen idea. Helen basically just ripped off Annie's idea for the shower and just took it to the 11 times a billion.
Yep.
And Annie completely loses it and is like trying to pick up this humongous cookie that's like as big as her and throw it into the chocolate thing. And she's just a mess and her car breaks down or something. Yeah, her car breaks down.
Yeah.
Or gets hit. It gets hit and then Rhodes comes to help her, and she's already called Ted to pick her up. And he's being his typical skeezy self. And Rhodes just looks at him in the car, looks at Ted in the car, and then looks back at Annie. And all he says is, "Come on."
Right. Yeah, I love that. It's actually almost like a breaking of the fourth wall moment. Like he doesn't actually look into the camera.
Right.
But it's pretty close. Like that's the feeling.
And it's just like, thank you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Oh my God. Going back, rewinding like 5 minutes in the film to the shower.
Yeah.
When she starts freaking out, two things. One, when she the physical humor of her trying to lift that cookie
in heels on grass.
Amazing. And also when she stabs the Eiffel Tower, something about the way she stabs it is amazing. And both my wife and I were dying, laughing. It was unreal.
Because she's physically not a very big person, and she was just flailing these limbs around and just trying to, like, you know, exude power. And it was like, dude, you have none. Like, stop trying. You know, it's so funny.
I think that's a really good point. That's actually one of the reasons that scene is really funny. Oh, and the other one I was going to say from that scene is them, and like you said, this might have been improv, but then her and Maya Rudolph screaming at each other, and then it getting into like somehow very quickly deteriorating into talking about bleaching their assholes.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
The volume gets turned up so high so quickly. You're just like, wow, runaway train.
Like there's some underlying unpleasantries that you have not dealt with. I understand. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let me see. Okay. This is an LOL, but also WTF moment at the end. And we'll get to the ending in a moment, but at the wedding, they are Dougie, the groom, and Lillian, the new wife, are driving off, and you know, Annie's just kind of standing there smiling and waving, and Megan comes over. She cannot keep it together, and she's like really trying not to laugh, but she's laughing really hard. And Annie's like, "What?" And she's like, "I put a loaded gun in her brother's suitcase as a joke." And I'm like, and she thinks it's the funniest thing ever. And I'm like, this is so messed up, but watching her lose it absolutely killed me.
Yeah.
So messed up.
Same exact reaction. I was just like, as someone who has been stressed out about, I don't even know, like having a bottle of water in my backpack.
I mean, I've been picked out of lines, right? Like we
100%.
grew up in Israel, and my passport had that on there for a long time, and I always got questioned. Like, it's not funny.
Yeah.
But it was so funny.
It was painful funny.
It was painful funny. Yeah. It was, exactly. Do you have any more strong LOL moments?
No, I rattled all my 20 of them off already. Yeah.
So let's end with the ending.
Yeah, 100%. So I think we referenced it earlier. You know, it ends with the wedding itself and things. The friendships being mended. Helen and Annie and Lillian agreeing to like maybe hang out sometime. But still maintaining some of the like dynamic of like, okay, Helen, go. You know, I forget what the last line she says to her is, but it's kind of like, all right, don't push your luck.
Like don't push it. Yeah.
And then, of course, Officer Rhodes showing up after the wedding, you know, to see her after he's not been returning her calls for months or whatever it's been.
And fighting off the raccoons for the cake.
Yeah, exactly. That was a nice tie. I liked that it's a little bit like, oh, you're going to end with the wedding. I guess that makes sense. That's a little bit like, okay, yeah, sure. It's a wedding movie. I guess you kind of have to, but it's also like, I don't know. There's a bunch of ways you could have gone that would be a little more original.
But I mean, it is called Bridesmaids, you know.
Yeah, so. I guess that's true. If this were like sliding doors or something, you know, we would have started in the middle with the ending of the wedding and then gone back to the, never mind. I'm going off on a thing. If Christopher Nolan directed this.
Hey.
But I like that Rhodes didn't show up till afterwards, at least. It wasn't like every single thread got tied together too perfectly. Like it was like, but it was pretty, you know, you're satisfied at the end, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't none of, you know, when I saw it for the first time and Wilson Phillips shows up, and I was like, okay, that's cute, I get it. Like, it's gimmicky, and I love, my favorite part about that is Annie looking over at Helen and being like, "Are you kidding?" And she was like, "It's the last one, I promise." Like, there's nothing else.
Right.
Like,
I do like that because it names the dynamic still.
Exactly, it totally owns it. Right, I did like that part. But I guess it wasn't none of the ending, with the exception of the gun in the suitcase, surprised me. Like, it was a very of like cookie cutter, like, oh, and then the guy showed, you know, blah, blah. But I do agree with you that I like that Rhodes did not show up until afterwards, that she had that closure with her friend. And that was a separate thing. Because I actually, come to think of it, don't think Lillian and Rhodes like interact.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And so there are these two different spheres. And so they know about each other, but they don't actually engage directly. And that I kind of liked that. Like, it was like two different components of who she is that both have their own stories that she needs to figure out.
That's a good point. I like that too.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, you know, I kind of left being like, I don't really know what the point of this movie was, but like, there were some funny parts, and holy moly, Melissa McCarthy, so funny. And just all of these powerhouses of comedy. And I just feel like some of the jokes I wasn't the right audience for. That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, that's legit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Well, it's a movie that will live in my heart since 2011. Two things I want to say, and this is funny that have not yet on the podcast talked about this, but when my wife and I were watching this movie again, she said, "We're going to watch the bloopers afterwards, right?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I forgot about the bloopers." And I actually think bloopers are often better than the film itself for like almost any film. And we haven't even talked about this yet.
No, we haven't.
Yeah. So now you get to go watch the bloopers.
I will.
I don't know if I had a specific link. Try to find the longest one you can, because there's a lot of bloopers, and some of them are only like 3 minutes on YouTube or wherever you end up going. Because people pretty much I think they rip it from the DVD and they post it online. That's I think what's happening. So that's one. And the other thing I would say is that there's another couple of movies where Melissa McCarthy and Rose Byrne end up in together. And so, for example, Spy, I actually thought was a really great movie.
I haven't seen that one yet. Oh, okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's not, you know, it's not gonna like rock, it's not gonna change your life or anything, but it's a very solid comedy that like does what I think like Naked Gun used to do back in the day. It's like parodying the spy world, or like the James Bond genre, if I can call it that. Yeah, I like that. A lot of people like the movie Heat. I thought it was okay. It wasn't my favorite, but
that's the one with Sandra Bullock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. The maybe you said you saw it. The trailer kind of confused me, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to have that clarified. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this was good. This was hard for me because I knew not hard for me. I'm not saying it was hard, but like it was a challenge to kind of, you know, I never want to bash a film in the context because of how much work we know. You and I have talked about this, about there's so much work that goes into a movie. And it was actually, I'm having more fun with the movies that I don't immediately love, because it really makes me think about it more objectively. And talking with you about it has actually helped me realize the jokes that I really liked more. So thank you.
Yeah, I think, heck yeah. I think there's a line, you and I were talking about this, and I want to say it on this episode, and I'm also going to give like a preview of the next episode. I think there's a line between just like, as you said, bashing something, or like just like knocking someone's work that they did, versus critically thinking about something and like talking out what you found compelling in versus what you didn't, or what you think worked and what didn't work.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's hard to walk that line sometimes, because sometimes you really just didn't like something.
Yes.
So, and then the preview for our next episode, or I guess we're calling it an in-between episode or a mini episode, is we're going to talk about Thunder Force, which is out on Netflix. And who knows, when you're listening to this like 30 years in the future, maybe it's on some other platform, or it's been being cast into your brain directly. But that's my little preview for the next
so we'll
episode.
See you then.
We'll see
very
you
soon. and go.
This is our classic opener where we both laugh because we don't have a plan for how to open it.
We forgot to plan that part.